Oh, hello, YouTube. Today on the Naughty Librarian, we are continuing on the James Bond journey, and today we are going over From Russia with Love by Ian Fleming. This is book 5 of the James Bond series, and it's kind of, okay, like I'll just say this is the most commercially successful of all the James Bond books. Is it my favorite? No. Like, there's way better books in the Bond series than From Russia with Love, but for some reason, this one is the most popular, and I'm not sure why. It's like all of like the progress we'd been making for the past couple books with like being surprisingly feminist and all of that stuff. It went out the window in this one. Let's just get right into the yikes factor, why don't we here? Because this book is just, dear Lord, so problematic. You know, all of the usual racism, all of the usual sexism, and all of the homophobia in this one. Now they're stepping it up a notch. So like, big ass yikes factor in this book. It's just so much. Like I was saying, they had all these like great heroines in the past 2 books who were just like incredible women who were like really had a lot of agency, and they were big parts of the plot, and they were helping James. They were like equals. And now we're here. Like, there's a lot of parallels between James and Tatiana in this, but they're not equals at all. Like, Tatiana is so Mary Sue all the time here. She like took a big step back. James fully living his misogynist fantasy in this book. We're back to Casino Royale, for fuck's sake. Like, we just went downhill from here. And there's like a whole like section of this book that takes place in Istanbul, and it's just astonishingly racist. I can barely fathom it. Like, it's not even trying to be subtle. It's just like outright racist, and it's super like rapey, and like I'm not gonna go into all the details even in the recap, because like, dear Lord, it's rough to get through. It is a lot in Istanbul, so oh my god. And in this one in particular, they're also really throwing in the homophobia card. Like, there have been like slight mentions before, but nothing really outwardly obviously homophobic. And this one is just basically using like the villain's sexuality to show how they're perverse and like gross, and like just kind of really putting that spin on it, and like straight up calling them perverts in this. It's like a lot. So yikes, this one just went all in on being awful. But that all being said, let's get into what actually happens in From Russia with Love. So the whole first like 30 to 40% of the book takes place in Russia, and James is not in the book at all. The first person we meet in this book is Donovan Grant, and he is the chief executioner for SMERSH, and he is just a complete psychopath, I would say, because he doesn't really have emotions or feelings. He only has urges to kill. And especially like every time there's a full moon, his urges get stronger, which like, I don't know, is he a werewolf? Like, I don't understand why they threw that in here. But going with that, when the moon is full, he gets these indiscriminate urges to kill, and he does so up and down Ireland, where he's from. Eventually he joins the British Army because he's like, well, now I'm gonna get paid to do it. So this is like, you know, work smarter, not harder kind of a deal. And he has to contain all of his, you know, full moon urges whilst in the army. So usually he just gets blackout drunk those nights, so it'll like suppress it. But eventually, you know, that's not really something you can continue long term, and he gets sick of it. He's like, no, I just want to like kill people all the time. Like, I need to go like hang out with people who think that's okay. So like, he steals a bunch of like military documents, gets on his little bike, like he just runs off to the Russians, just crosses the border. He's like, hey guys, guess what? I want to be friends with you. Let me kill people. I totally like it. Here's all these documents. And SMERSH is just like, all right, I guess you're here. We don't really have much to lose. So, Sure, go kill people. Why not? Why not? It's a win-win situation here. So they like take him in, and he's very happy with SMERSH. He gets to kill all of the people he wants. And in between killings, you know, he just literally hangs out and waits and does nothing until someone comes and gives him a call and says like, hey, we got killing to do, like the Terminator. Like he just sits there and stares at stuff until it's killing time. Wow. He's kind of the anti-James. So I get why they're showing this character, because James does have similar mindsets he can get into when it's assassin time, where he doesn't have emotions. James is still like not a complete monster. He still has feelings. So one day SMERSH calls up Grant and they're like, we got an assignment for you. We want you to go undercover as a British spy so you can kill another British spy, because he's already like Irish, so he's kind of the perfect fit here. So let's move on to the inner workings of SMERSH in general. We're gonna go over there, and I get it. This whole first half of the book is this juxtaposition, because it's showing how SMERSH's like inner circle works, how they like assign missions, their motivation for missions, and like, you know what? The British have similar motivations at time. You know, it's kind of showing like they're both kind of the same. One is more evil than the other, but in the spy world, it's everybody doing the same shit, kind of a thing. So like, it's an interesting juxtaposition, but not necessarily the most fun to read. So the leader of SMERSH is General G. I'm just gonna call him General G because his last name is very long. I have it on the screen here, but I don't want to butcher it. And he calls all the heads of like all the different branches of, you know, Russian intelligence together, and they're gonna come up with a plan, because they basically just want to stick it to the West. They want to like make themselves look like super cool and formidable, and like everyone will think they have this best spy game, right? Like they just basically want to look cool to everybody. And in order to look cool to everybody, they have to like punch a nerd. Like they're the high school bullies. Although like in Casino Royale, the British, their whole point of the plot was just to stick it to the communists. So together, all of these heads of intelligence, they decide that the British is probably their best target, because they don't really think much of the Americans. They're like, oh, they're cute over there doing their spy stuff. Like they don't really see them as a formidable threat, but they're like, the British though, they've been fucking with us for a minute. So they want to cause like a big scandal and just make them look weak. And they end up picking James Bond as their target because he's well known in, you know, British intelligence, and also he has stopped several Russian attacks, and he's pissing them off. General G, he calls in Colonel Rosa Klebb and Kronstein, who is a SMERSH spy whose cover is like a chess master, which I thought was pretty cool. He's an undercover spy and also plays chess. And he's tasked both of them in coming up with the big plan to disgrace the British Secret Service. You know what? Their plan isn't all that original. I'm like, you know, they're supposed to be geniuses here, but they basically just decide on like a honey trap plan. They're gonna send in like one of their prettiest girls to like get James to like sleep with her, and then they're gonna secretly film it, and then they're gonna kill James and like release the sex tape to the press and like cause like an international scandal. It's like they're trying to make the real world a soap opera drama. Like, why? You're gonna be asking yourself why a lot in this book, because nothing makes sense at times here, but we're gonna keep going. To get this mission going, they pick a young corporal named Tatiana Romanova as the bait, because she basically looks like Greta Garbo. So she's like really hot, and they're like, you're perfect. And they tell her that the mission is for her to fall in love with James Bond, and she's supposed to get James Bond to fall in love with her, and then bring her back to the British so she can defect and like tell them a bunch of false information that they'll give her, and like give them a fake encryption machine and stuff. And then once the British like, you know, resettle her in Canada, which is what they do for like a lot of defectors, they'll come pick her up and bring her back to Moscow. And they are telling her all the unsavory parts of the mission. She just knows she needs to seduce someone. Mind you, she's a very kind of inexperienced woman. She's not very old. I think she's like 24-ish. she's really young. She doesn't have a lot of sexual experience, and she's like, I gotta do what? So it's a lot, and it's really gross because they also make her go to like seduction school where they're going to teach her how to seduce men / do sex stuff. So yikes. It's a lot here. But again, they're not telling her all the unsavory bits, like how she's going to be starring in a sex tape and they're going to murder James. So she doesn't know any of this. And she goes along with all of it because, you know, she still believes that the government has her best interests in mind. You know, bless her little heart that she hasn't realized that no, they don't. So she's very much a Mary Sue for the whole book. She's very naive and just going along with things and not questioning anything. So she's not a great heroine because we just had 2 rock star heroines and now we get Tatiana. Anyways, that's enough in Russia. Let's get into the James Bond stuff. So we're gonna move back over to England here. And James, he's just languishing in boredom. The only thing that really ever excites him in life are missions. Otherwise, James is just adrift around all of these normal people. He can't relate to most people. Like, his job is international super spy, and like having to be normal for so long makes his skin itchy, and he's just not the best at it. He just, like, you know, every day is the same monotonous thing over and over and over again. And also, on a personal note, James is also rather heartbroken at the moment because Tiffany left him. So in the end of Diamonds Are Forever, Tiffany Case, our heroine from that book, moved in with James. Like, he was in love with her. He's like, I'm gonna marry this girl. Tiffany and James were living together for several months, and they had a big fight, falling out kind of a situation. James admits it's probably his fault. Like, he knows he fucked it up. And Tiffany moved out, and she ended up taking up with some guy from the American embassy, and they went back to America and they're engaged now. So he's like really messed up about it. Like, he really, really misses her. And he has nothing to occupy his mind with because he doesn't have a mission right now. So he's just being like a grumpy a-hole to everybody around the office. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, James. Like, I don't know, take a nap. What's wrong? So grumpy, in fact, that the first case that comes on M's desk, he's like, James, please go do this mission. Get out of here. So he calls up James. And, you know, since James is officially single now, he's kind of perfect for it. M tells James that there's this Russian woman from the KGB. Out of nowhere, she goes up to the head of the British station in Istanbul, and she tells them, I'm in love with James Bond because, like, when I was working for the KGB, I kept having to see his file, and he was just, like, so dreamy, and, like, I transferred out of Moscow so I could be farther away, so, like, I would have a chance at like going to the British and being able to meet James because I'm in love with him. James finds this a bit far-fetched at first because it is. And Emma's like, no, look at you, you're a dashing, handsome guy. And James is like, I am a dashing, handsome guy. I am. He's all heartbroken over Tiffany, so I think he needs the ego boost. So he's like, why wouldn't she be in love with me? So even though there are elements of the story that are sketchy, they're gonna go along with the plan because this woman has sweetened the deal by telling them that she has the Spectre cipher. No relation to Spectre, because that doesn't even exist yet in the books. But she's going to basically steal this cipher machine and she's going to smuggle it to the British. And the only condition of her doing this is that she wants James himself to come to Istanbul and pick her up and bring her back to Britain. And the British really want that machine, so they're like, James, your mission here is to go to Istanbul, you're going to seduce Tatiana and bring her back here with the cipher. Kind of like any means necessary. You need to get her to fall in love with you even more. And they give him like all this cool spy gear. It's always fun when like James gets to go to Q Branch. So they give him this briefcase which has like weapons and money and all kinds of stuff built into it. And they put him on the first plane out to Istanbul. And James on the plane has nothing to do but think. He's just sitting there thinking about the mission. And he's kind of he doesn't really particularly like the implications of it, because in his own words, he's being sent to pimp for England, which he's not wrong. So it's kind of interesting to see how both Tatiana and James are in very similar situations for this mission. Both of their governments are telling them to use sex, use their own body to seduce another person. The main difference here is that James has some agency in this situation. Like, he could have said no. And Tatiana has no agency here. She can't say no. If she says no, the government, it'll kill her friends and family. Like, she has no choice here. So it's kind of interesting to see the juxtaposition of these two characters. So James, he lands in Istanbul and he meets up with the station head, this guy named Karim. And Karim is a repugnant character, at least to me. I would hope to everybody, but at least to me. But in the context of the book, he and James are like good friends. Like, it really upsets me because I'm not even gonna get into all of like the batshit stuff Karim says, especially about how he treats women in particular. But yikes. Remember how he said Istanbul was incredibly racist and rapey? Well, exhibit A. Like, it's a lot. But we're gonna stick within the context of the mission, so I don't even have to think about how repugnant Karim is. Karim, he gives James all the stuff he's gonna need for his mission. He's like his guy in the chair, you know what I mean? He's setting up travel arrangements, passports, all that stuff. And he's like, James, all right, I'll get all this ready. You go back to your hotel, you know, make sure no one's already ransacked it. Frankly, they probably have, because he knows how Istanbul is. It's really dangerous right now. Like, in fact, just the other day, someone blew up part of Karim's office. Like, the wall there is a brand new wall. Like, it's a dangerous city, and James has got to be on his A game. And spoiler alert, I don't think he is. James goes back to his hotel to find that because he's a friend of Karim's, like, the hotel didn't know this in advance. We're so sorry. We didn't know you were friends with Karim. You have been upgraded to the honeymoon suite. And you should go there instead of your old room. And James is like, finds this suspicious, but he can't really see the obvious trap yet. So he's like, it's a nicer room, so whatever. Even if I'm in a trap, at least I'm gonna be comfortable. So he goes up to the new room. He just kind of goes along with it. No one's actively trying to kill him at the moment. He might as well enjoy the room. And for a couple days, James has literally nothing to do in Istanbul because all he can do is wait around for Tatiana to make contact again. So he just hangs out with Karim a whole bunch. They just go do friend stuff. They go sightseeing. They spy on the Russians. You know, all the friendship stuff here. The main outing they have is that they go to a Roma camp right outside of the city. And the head of the tribe, Vavra, he is like friends with Karim, and like sometimes he like spies for Karim and stuff. They're buddies. And you know what? I'm just gonna make the sequence in the Roma camp as brief as possible because, dear Lord, the whole thing is just a bucket of yikes from start to finish. So it's a lot to unpack that I don't think it's time to do right now. So I'm just gonna give you like the abbreviated version. The camp is gonna have two women fight each other to death over a man. Both women love the same man, and the man is like, I don't know, fight each other, whoever lives, I'll marry. So, like I said, we're not even gonna like try to unpack this right now. This is just what's going on in the book. James and Karim are welcome to stay for dinner and the show, but they can't intervene in any way because it's just their culture. It's how they do things. They're not allowed to stop it. So they sit down, start enjoying the fight, and James is really like sizing up the women, and he's like, oh, who would win in this fight? Like, that one's like scrappy, and that one's like bigger, but she's faster. And, you know, they're fighting and doing their thing, and the fight is interrupted by an explosion, and a bunch of guys with guns come, and they start trying to kill Vavra and Karim. And it's the same gangsters who like blew up part of Karim's wall the other day. So James, he gets into this gunfight with them, and he like kills several of the gangsters. In the end, there's like about like, I don't know, 10 to 12 people dead between gangsters and members of the Roma camp. After the smoke settles, Karim he has had enough of this shit. He's like, nope, they blew up my office. They're shooting up my friend's house. No, we're gonna go get these gangsters, James. Like, let's go after the head gangster. Take him out once and for all because I'm not fucking around anymore. James and Kareem leave. They go hunt down Krylenko, who is the head gangster guy. And, they find out his secret hideout. And they set up all this stuff where Kareem has a big sniper rifle and they kill him with a sniper rifle. So, they've had an exciting night out together. So after that's done, James and Kareem, they come back to town, they part ways. James goes back to his hotel room. He's like, all right, well, I'm going to have a shower and a nap. Like, I've had a night. So James, he takes his shower. He's just kind of hanging out in the room. And he finds out, oh no, my room is no longer empty. There is a very naked Tatiana Romanova waiting for him in his bed. Like I said, Tatiana isn't really the wanton temptress here. And like the Russians have tried to make her into that with their seduction lessons, but she's still not the wanton seductress. She's kind of really like nervous about the whole situation because she's alone in a room with a naked man she doesn't know. She doesn't know what's about to happen to her. However, James isn't like a sex maniac, so he doesn't just like leap on her and start ravaging her. He just like sits down for a minute and he's like, okay, well, let's talk. Like, what's going on here? And he's not being like outwardly sexually aggressive to her in any way, so it does like help her calm down and like ease into the situation much more easier. Also, the Russians have been telling her for probably a few months now that she's in love with James, just repeating it over and over in her head, so she's probably starting to believe it a little bit at this point. James's plan is to get Tatiana back to Britain as soon as possible, so he's like, hey, in the morning we'll get on a plane, go to Britain. Tatiana outright refuses. She's like, nope, 0%. That's not going to happen. Her plan is that she's working night duty at like the Russian office in town, and she'll be alone so she can steal the cipher. And then she's going to meet James at the train station because she's like, no, I'm not getting on a plane. We've got to take the Orient Express all the way from Istanbul to England. That's what we're doing. I will accept no other travel arrangements. James is rather hesitant about this because that is a shit plan where a lot of things could go wrong. But Tatiana is so insistent that he's like, all right, fine. Like, we'll take the train. And since that's all settled, they have nothing to do for a few hours. So they just proceed to have very consensual sex, at least. At least there's that. All the while, though, they are unaware that the Russians have set up hidden cameras behind like the mirrors in the room. So they just record the whole thing while there's like a couple agents there. And like, it's kind of really gross because the agents are just watching this happen and enjoying it. Like, it's not really very graphic in the book, but like, what they're doing. After the sex, they part ways. Tatiana goes to work. James, he gets all of his ducks in a row for this train trip. He calls up Kareem. He's like, Kareem, I need you to go on this train with me because like shit's going down now. And so they both get everything together and they both meet at the train station right as the train is leaving, like the last possible moment. James and Kareem meet up once they're on the train, and Kareem is like, hey, guess what, James? Like, I have already recognized at least 3 Russian spies on this train. Like, potentially this could be a coincidence. Like, maybe they are actually on business and does not have anything to do with Tatiana because they don't know she's here, but like it's rather suspicious. So Kareem, he's basically gonna use like all of his connections with like the police and like heads of state and stuff and like a bunch of money, and he's gonna like use his like influence to try to get these 3 Russian spies kicked off the train for like various reasons. So they part ways. Kareem is going to go work on that. James is going to like deal with Tatiana. And James is so grumpy about it because there's 3 Russian spies on the train. James is really looking forward to taking a nap. he hasn't slept all night because, you know, the sex and then like the mission setup. So he's sleepy and he can't go to sleep even though he wants to. And he can't even have any leisure time with Tatiana because he has to stay on guard just in case there's trouble happening. So he's really grumpy about it. He can't sleep and he can't have sex. Like, what is he gonna do with his time? At the first stop, some of Kareem's efforts have paid off because they were able to get 2 of the 3 Russian spies kicked off the train. However, there's still that third one to deal with, but you know, their problems have gone from 3 to 1, so they're feeling better about the situation. And like another day goes by on the train and like nothing happens at all. And James is like, it's weird that it's this quiet. Like something's up. Like it's never this easy on a mission. So he's starting to think like something's about to go wrong. And then finally something does go wrong. And the conductor comes up to their cabin and he's like knocking on the door. And he's like, James, there's been a horrible accident with your friend Kareem. Accident is being used very loosely here because what actually happened is that third Russian spy and Kareem got into a fight and then like the Russian spy killed Kareem, but Kareem killed him back. So they're just like dead together in this room. They have both killed each other. And James is upset because he's like, oh no, Kareem was awesome. We were buddies. So now that there's been like 2 murders on the train has been stopped. Okay, the police have to come. It's going to be stopped all day. So one of Kareem's many sons, he's like the Nick Cannon of Istanbul. He's got baby mamas everywhere. Just so many women he has impregnated. So he has like so many sons, but one of his many sons comes and picks him up and he takes him back to, you know, his apartment for the day. So James and Tatiana have like a safe house. And, you know, James is like, okay, well, it's time to regroup. He calls up M. He tries to, you know, relating what's been happening on the mission, but like in their code speak. And M kind of casually mentions like maybe he'll send out an extra agent to like help out on the mission, just, you know, for backup. And James doesn't really think much of it. He's like, all right, fine, whatever. Now James and Tatiana have nothing to do but wait in the apartment all day. And James, it gives him a lot of time to really think about things. Mind you, his friend just got killed. He's a bit upset. So he starts getting more and more suspicious of Tatiana. Like, he doesn't think she's like the mastermind of this whole plot because frankly, she's not smart enough. she's really not. So he's like, okay, obviously she doesn't know all of the details here, but there is a bigger plot that she has to know at least a little bit of, and she's not telling me about it. But nevertheless, he can't do anything about it right now, so they just have to keep going with their mission. So they get back on the train later that evening, continuing on to England. And then like another couple days go by where like nothing really goes wrong. So James and Tatiana just kind of spend as much time as possible in their cabin, you know, for safety and also for sex. I don't know why I quoted it. They were just banging on a train the whole time. But anyway, in Italy, they're at a stop and James sees this guy who is like the most stereotypically British man he has ever seen board the train. And James is like, huh, you know what? I bet that's that agent M told me about. Yep. He did say he was going to send an agent. I bet it's him. So James and Tatiana and the man, they make contact with each other finally. And this man introduces himself as Agent Nash. And this guy is the most painfully weird and awkward person that James has ever met. He's like, how have you made it this far in the service, let alone life, with these skills? Like, you are so weird. Like, but he's like, all right, well, he's like kind of an odd duck, but he's an agent, I guess. Like, James is just not using a lot of his like critical thinking skills for most of the book. But again, nothing he can do about it now. So James, Tatiana, they go to lunch, and Tatiana's like, James, that guy is a legit creep. I don't like him at all. Also, he's up to something. Like, I know a lot of Russian spies, and he's totally a Russian spy. Like, have you seen him? Like, oh my gosh. Like, and he even said his name was Nash. Like in like Russian spy lingo, like Nash means he's one of ours and Savoy would mean he's one of theirs. Like, it's a little obvious, don't you think? And James, in just a staggering show of sexism, is just like, he just basically pats her on the head and is like, oh, calm down, the man will take care of it. And it's like, James, so many women have told you when they know a guy is dangerous or that they are in danger, and he has just never listened to them. Like, historically speaking, these women have never been wrong, and James has still not learned his lesson yet. If someone says that guy's a creep, start thinking about him like he's a creep. Like, I don't know why. I knew it's sexism, but like, yikes. After lunch, James and Tatiana, they go back to their cabin again, and they just, bang away the afternoon on the train. That's how they spend the majority of their time. It's just having sex on the train in their cabin. So that's what they do all afternoon. I guess they work up an appetite because they go to dinner that night with Nash to have a nice meal. And Nash, he's just weirder than ever. Like, he really conspicuously spills Tatiana's drink, and he gets her a new one. And you don't let strangers get you drinks. And shortly afterward, Tatiana is all but passing out at the table. Obviously, I feel like she's been drugged, but James just assumes, oh, you know what? She must be so sleepy. She's been really stressed out lately, and we've been banging all day. I'm sorry, James. No dick is that good. You thought you exhausted her that much that she passed out at dinner? James. But anyway, Tatiana's passing out at the table. And Nash is like, don't worry about it. You pick up the check. I'll take her back to the cabin. We'll meet up there. And James is like, that's a good idea, Nash. I don't know why he thinks that's a good idea. So James gets back to the cabin. Tatiana is passed out in a bunk. Nash is just kind of sitting there reading a book. And James says, hey, why don't you stay the night? Help keep guard. And Nash is like, okay, cool. But I'm unarmed. So James is like, oh, okay, yeah, of course. And he just hands this guy his gun. And I have no idea why James doesn't think it's at all suspicious that a trained British Secret Service agent is unarmed on a mission where he's sent to protect people. He's there for backup and he's not armed? Why doesn't James think this is suspicious? Is he that sleepy? No, he's just dumb. I don't understand how James is just so dumb in this book. So James, he takes a nap, just hands his gun to a stranger and takes a nap. And a couple hours go by and Nash wakes him up. He's like, hey, James, I'm in the mood for a talk. And then he proceeds to fire a warning shot at James with his own freaking gun. James is like, okay. And Nash reveals himself to be Grant, the psychopath SMERSH assassin from the beginning of the book. I feel like the readers already knew this, but James does not. This is the part of the book where, the villain gets their time to shine. They get their big monologue where they lay out the details of their dastardly plans. And so Nash, he proceeds to lay out the whole plan they had with the sex tape and the murder and how the cipher is actually a bomb and then it'll blow up when the British start playing with it. And to top things off even here, this whole monologue gets even juicier because Nash starts dropping names of all of the high-ranking officials in SMERSH, and he's like, oh yeah, and I'm supposed to meet Rosa Klebb at this hotel in Paris at this time tomorrow. He just lays so many details out. And then he's like, cool, all I got left to do in this plan is kill you and Tatiana. And this plot device in particular, we've seen it a lot where the villain needs a monologue about his plans. But this one in particular is so poorly placed because why? Grant is a psychopath, sociopath character. He doesn't have any friends. He doesn't talk to people in friendly chats. He just sits there like the Terminator waiting for someone to kill. Why? Why would he sit down all of a sudden and feel very chatty with James? It makes no sense why this character would have talked to James at all. He would have waited until James fell asleep and strangled him to death and went about his day. There's no sense in it here and it bothers me. This book has just doesn't make any sense at times. I was saying, and it's stupid. like, ah! But back to the plot. James, he's sitting there listening to, Grant tell this evil plan. And James knows, oh, well, I'm pretty much fucked at this point. I don't know what to do. I only got one plan. It's a shitty one. So James, he basically takes out like this heavy book that he brought on the trip, to read, because of course they're going to read books on a train. He takes out this heavy book and his cigarette case, and he's just like, well, I'm going to smoke if you're going to kill me anyway. And basically the plan is Grant was going to shoot James while they're in a tunnel because it's really loud. So James is waiting till they're right about to go into the tunnel because he knows Grant is about to shoot. So he just grabs the book and cigarette case and like holds it up in front of him and like leaps out of the way right as Grant shoots. And like that was the whole plan. Like James has had this plan several times where he's just like, when in doubt, flail. And luckily this whole, book and cigarette case plan paid off because it stopped the bullet. He just has to pretend that he's dead for a while. So he's all sprawled out on the floor like, oh, I'm dead, la la la. And he's also like kind of carefully positioning himself so his hands are very near his briefcase, where he has all these hidden weapons and stuff. Like he knows he has like knives in there. So James waits until Grant is like stepping over him to like go, kill Tatiana. He's literally standing over James. Mind you, why didn't Grant check if he was dead? Makes no sense. But luckily, again, for James, Grant is sloppy. But James, he like grabs one of the knives and he like leaps up. He like lunges forward and he stabs Grant in the femoral artery. He was thinking about where's the best place to stab Grant. He's like, well, that's the only place I can reach. So he's like, ah! He stabs him in the leg, hoping he's gonna bleed out real fast. No such luck. Grant is an enormous man. So they have just like the messiest fight. Just like sloppy. They're in a very contained space, like hitting each other with stuff. They're breaking stuff. It's a very messy, drug out fight. And it ends when basically James is able to get a hold of the gun and he like shoots Grant a lot. Like he finishes the clip. Like he was upset. So the train leaves the tunnel and now James is just like, ugh. Like he's just been in a big fight and he has a dead body and an unconscious drugged woman with him. So he's like, okay, what am I gonna do now? Here's the plan. James, he's gonna annoy Tatiana until she wakes up. At least enough that she can like kind of walk around a little bit. So he annoys her a lot and she's like, ah, fine. And like he's kind of like dragging her out with him. And he gives the porter on the train like a big tip. He's like, hey, let my doctor friend stay in the cabin because he's been up all night helping my very sick wife. Like I'm taking her to the hospital, but like just let him stay. It's all good. And the porter's like, oh, well, this is a lot of money, so sure. He gets away with it. So he takes Tatiana off the train immediately. He's like, I gotta get out of here before they find that dead body. Next step, James, he gets Tatiana to the British Embassy in Dijon, France. Mind you, she's all drugged, so she's not doing much of anything besides sleeping, but she's at the British Embassy. And James, he gets in contact with his old friend Matisse from Casino Royale, his French friend, who's in like French intelligence. Matisse is like, James, what's up? And like he takes the cipher to their bomb squad and they get that all taken care of because like, yikes, it's a bomb. And he also gets James like what he needs for this continuing mission. Because remind you, Grant laid out exactly where Rosa Kleb's gonna be. At what hotel, at what time. So Matisse, he gets, James a passkey for the Ritz-Carlton in Paris. He runs off to Paris to, the hotel. He's gonna go meet up with Rosa Kleb, get rid of her once and for all. So James, he goes to the room, he knocks on the door, and Rosa's like, come in. And like, he enters the hotel room. Now, mind you, Rosa Kleb is all dressed up like a little old lady, knitting, just being like the cutest little old lady. And James is like, this is weird. But you know what? Fuck it. I'm sticking to the plan here. So he's like, sits down. He's like, you're Rosa Kleb. I'm glad to meet you. Dun, dun, dun. Trying to drop that bombshell here. The little lady is like, you know what? You're obviously in the wrong place and insane. So, I'm going to call the front desk. So she's reaching for this button to call like the intercom. As she's pushing the button, James does his go-to plan of flailing. So he goes flail, and he like flails backward in the chair right before like a shot is fired from like the secret phone gun. I guess they had a gun in the phone somehow, and she pushes a button and it fires a shot. So James is on the floor and he's escaped getting shot by the phone. And then all hell breaks loose again. This is his second fight in less than 24 hours. So Kleb is like coming at him like a mad woman, just like, wah! Like just with knitting needles and stuff. And James realizes these are not ordinary knitting needles, they're covered in poison. So like danger is afoot. So they're fighting, and it ends in a really cartoonish way because James, he like grabs a chair and he's holding it with like the chair legs like facing away from him, and he literally just runs at Kleb as fast as he can, and he like like jams the chair into the wall with like Rosa Kleb stuck in between the legs of the chair. So he just pins her to the wall with a chair, and he's like, ha, 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 ha. That's how he wins the fight. It's really silly. And then he just like takes his time and enjoys gloating about it and stuff because, you know, Matisse shows up with his men. They're gonna take away Rosa Kleb. He's like, I did a good job today. And if only, you know, James didn't take the time to gloat and he was smart and like thought about things, because it gives Rosa Kleb enough time to activate a little like inch-long knife in her boot. And she kicks James in the shin on the way out with her little knife. Mind you, she likes poison. This knife was covered in poison. James is now poisoned. And James immediately starts feeling very faint, and he has trouble breathing, and he's like, I don't know what's happening. Last thing he sees is Mathis coming back toward him as he loses consciousness and then crashes to the floor. And then that is the end of the book. We have cliffhanger trauma. That's how you end it, with James just literally crashing to the floor in a fade to black? Trauma! In the real world, Ian Fleming was getting tired of writing all the James Bond books. He was like, you know what? They're never been really commercially successful up until this point, and like, I'm running out of ideas. Fuck it. I'm gonna write one more book and I'm gonna give it my all, and that's it. So Fleming probably intended this to be actually James's death. He killed off James in the book, which is like, what? We've never seen James get killed off before. Somehow, From Russia with Love became a smash hit. Like, even John F. Kennedy said it was one of his favorite books, which I don't know how I would feel about that, but it was wildly popular. It finally made the American markets. Everybody loved James Bond. The movie deals start coming in. So Fleming's like, well, shit, I guess people like him. I'll write more. So he basically then wrote a bunch more books in the series. And he also started writing with like other authors as well to like, you know, supplement his own writing. And like, I'm not going to get into all the real life drama here, but it caused a lot of problems, him working with other authors, especially in Thunderball's case. But we'll get to that when we get to Thunderball. Anyway, that was From Russia with Love by Ian Fleming. It's not my favorite of the James Bond books, mainly because James is stupid. He just sees so many clues and just disregards them. Very obvious things are missed. And like, I get what they're doing with the book, where it's showing a lot of juxtaposition between the Russians and the British and how like they have so many similarities between them. Even Tatiana and James are in similar situations. This is all about mirror images. So from a literary sense, I enjoy that. I think it was a really cool idea to show mirror images in a spy thriller. Great idea, great plot device. However, the characters are dumb and this is astonishingly problematic. So it's not my favorite. I mean, the movie though, I love the movie. The movie's one of the best movies in all of the James Bond movies. But in the end, I think I gave it like 3 stars, 3.5 maybe if I'm feeling like generous, but it's not the best. It's the most commercially successful, and I don't like it that much. On that note, let me know in the comments down below, what's a popular book that you've read that you have not understood the hype for? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I will see you guys soon. Goodbye.